Hello everyone, welcome to another Flesh and Blood video. In this one, we're going over a different Cindra list than the one that I originally uploaded towards the start of the Hunted. Cindra was a hero that I really didn't expect to enjoy so much. Coming into the Hunted, I wasn't really excited for any of the heroes, but after playing a whole bunch of Cindra, she has become my new favorite very fast, similar to how I felt with the other ninjas. I guess I'm just a ninja player, but Cindra is incredibly fun. But prior to this upcoming format, Cindra was sort of forced into that full red build with a lot less of the higher cost cards that you could be playing or choosing to use more discounts. However, coming into the new format with now Aurora, Zen, and Enigma all gone, we can play a little more greedy, playing a few more blues in our deck, as because games are just going to be a little longer, as well as with one of our bad matchups, Jarl, being more prevalent. Since now games are slower, Guardian can actually kind of come back and play the game. So we need more blues to deal with some of those pesky frostbites. So this build looks to help alleviate that, as well as play some cards that we never really played in Cindra before to be incredibly powerful. But with all of that, let's get started with the deck list. As you may know, Cindra Drakai of Retribution is a 4 intellect, 40 health Royal Draconic Ninja hero. She has two abilities. Whenever you hit a marked hero, you create a fealty token, and once per turn instant for 3 resource, you can equip 2 Draconic daggers from your graveyard, and it costs 1 less for each of your Draconic chain links. Of course, the only Draconic dagger in the game is the Kunais of Retribution. These are just a 1 power Draconic Ninja Weapon Dagger one-handed with a once per turn action to attack for 1 resource with go again, but they're destroyed when the combat chain closes. Pretty simple. For our equipment, we're playing the same old equipment that we played before. Mask of Momentum, as this in combination with Flick Knives lets you threaten so many card draws. Flick Knives, as they are the core equipment in the deck, letting you get free damage, especially now that we're actually attacking with our daggers or plan to be attacking with our daggers. It's important to have the Flick Knives since they're going to be destroyed anyway. The Blood Splattered Vest to help us pay for some turns. We just need that 1 extra resource. And the Dragon Scalar Flight Paths, as they're very good on turns that we go for double finisher turns, or turns that we go for our Wrath of Retribution. Overall, just the same equipment that we've always been playing, just because it's kind of the best thing that Cindra can be doing. The only piece of equipment that I think you can theoretically swap out mainboard wise is playing Snapdragon Scalers over Dragon Scalar Flight Paths, because it can hit everything in the deck that you'd actually need to hit, apart from like the CNCs that are in the sideboard, if we make them Draconic and actually have to give it go again. But other than that, Dragon Scalar Flight Paths are like the main, or Snapdragon Scalers can replace the Dragon Scalar Flight Paths, but I would still recommend the Flight Paths since this deck doesn't brick all too often, since we're planning on starting with a kunai part of the time, as well as I just rather have the Flight Paths bonus attack for our Wrath turns or our bigger pop-off turns. That just ups the Flight Paths, as well as we do get to play one of Snag in our sideboard, but we'll talk about that one a little later. For our main board, we see a lot of the standard things. 3 Blaze Headlong, 6 Brands, 3 Burning Blade Dance, 2 Demonstrate Devotion, 3 Display Loyalty, 3 Hot on Their Heels, Ignite, Lava Burst, Rising Resentment, Ronin Renegade. Pretty simple stuff, as well as the one of Drop of Dragon's Blood. Although the numbers for our other things are pretty different, or some things you may not see in other blue lists. So let's talk about all of those. Firstly, we are down to only 2 copies of Ancestral Empowerment. Why is that? Well, because a lot of the targets in the deck just aren't Draconic. Of course, all of your head jabs are Draconic. You can, or are Ninja. Sorry. You need them all to be Ninja. Ancestral, really good on your head jabs, yes, but other than your head jabs, you sometimes you need to use it to pump over a D-React. That's kind of the times where you actually want to be playing the Ancestral Empowerment in this format, and it can't target your Blaze Headlong, it can't target your Oath of Loyalty, and that can sometimes make it pretty hard to actually pump over for that trigger, because you want to use it to get through your Mask of Momentum hits. And because of that, it can't target some of the attacks in the deck. We're only on 2 copies, as well as we're still on Oath of Loyalty in this version of the deck, which means we need to use a fealty on those turns anyway to play the Ancestral Empowerment. So sometimes it might not actually be that playable. We're only on 1 copy of the Art of Dragonblood and 2 copies of the Art of Dragon Fire. These used to be a little higher numbers in the original list, but this list is just straight up all about being consistent, and the one card that isn't very consistent is Art of Dragonblood, as you can't always guarantee you have a fealty or a brand with Cinderclaw to make it draconic. It's good on bigger pop-off turns later in the game, but early game it just really doesn't do anything, so we're only opting to play the 1 copy. 2 Art of Dragonfire is great mid and late game. Kinda sucks early, but that's okay. We're still playing 2 copies of it because it can close out a game. 2 copies of Bloodrun's Deep. This is a card that I didn't play in the other version of the list because sometimes you'd have to cut it out to play Arcane Barrier, but now we're only on 1 AB, and we're always bringing in 2 daggers in every matchup we play, so Bloodrun's Deep is actually really powerful because it can be a way that we can break both of our daggers. Since our blues should generally convert into 2 dagger swings plus one of our 1-cost cards, Flick Knives can only destroy one of our daggers, which means we need to find cards like Burning Blade Dance or Throw Dagger to break the other one to get full value out of Cindra's ability. And Bloodrun's Deep is just another card that gets to do that. We're only on 2 Breaking Point because we're on a bit less of the 1-cost cards in this list. If we draw a 1-cost card, the best thing we can start with is a Spreading Flames, not so much end with one of these 1-for-5s, but of course that's why we're on the Blood Splattered Vests, because it lets us play them. But of course we don't get all of the activations of Blood Splattered Vest in... we don't get too many, We don't get too many activations of the Blood Splattered Vest, so playing less 1-cost cards is pretty favorable for us here. Scrolling down, we talked about it a little bit. Another new 1-cost card in the deck is Spreading Flames. This is, of course, a Fi staple, giving all of your Draconic attacks 1 more power while their base is less than your Draconic chain links. Because Cindra gets to play 2 Draconic daggers, you get so much value off this card. This and a blue by itself with your 2 daggers is a 2-card 7, which is an insane amount. As well as you have 1 more resource floating, which means you can do any of your other 1-cost cards. You also have your 3 Draconic chain links, so you can do all this other stuff in your deck, and you still probably have 2 or 3 other cards that you can still play afterwards, plus your Threatening Mask triggers this turn, and you're getting all this value. Spreading Flames, one of the better cards in the deck. Because we get to play more blues, this has become an insanely powerful card. It used to not be as good in the other version of the deck because we didn't have enough blues to actually play the Spreading Flames out, and we wanted to use our daggers on the same turn, but now that we're on more blues, we can so easily do that. The last red in the deck that might not really fit the idea that we're going with is Oath of Loyalty. A lot of the other blue Cindra lists aren't playing Oath of Loyalty. However, since every attack in the main board every attack in the main board is or we want to make Draconic. So everything in our deck is already playable under the Oath of Loyalty. Dragon Power is a card we want to make Draconic, same as the arts. We want Draconic attacks. And Oath of Loyalty just doesn't really restrict us there. It's a good starter. It's a 0 for 4. Lets us play all of our base Draconic attacks. It does kind of suck to have it on the same turn as a Spreading Flames, because you have to start with the Oath of Loyalty, and the daggers are already getting pumped from just the Spreading Flames chain link. But even then, it's still a 0 for 4 coming in. The card does block 3. It's a great arsenal. This deck can easily set up a bunch of fealties since there really aren't many cards you need to spend your fealty on. You can use them on things like your Ariax, your Ancestral Empowerment, and your one of Conceal Blade or your Throw Daggers, or end the turn with your Prowess of Agility if you had an Oath of Loyalty turn by spending that fealty token. As well as you have 6 brands for 6 different attacks that you actually want to make draconic. So if you can line those up, that's pretty nice. Of course, don't think about this as I should save the brand. If you can save the brand in Arsenal, that's great, but don't think you need to only use brands on these attacks. You will use fealty on them at some point. And there's many games you don't even play the dragon powers. The last attack I forgot to mention that's red is Wrath of Retribution. Card's just good in the deck, really powerful, especially with Spreading Flames now, as Spreading Flames Dagger makes your Wrath of Retribution free. Even though you already swung with 2 daggers, that's still fine. You can have turns, you can then swing with your other 2 daggers for 3, allowing that 3-card hand to be a 7, or no, that's a 20, no, I was right the first time. A 17 damage 3 cards with Blue Flames Wrath and both your daggers up. Actually, a 20 damage turn because you can flick one of the daggers. 23 damage if you use your shoes on it off just those 3 cards. So this combination of cards is very powerful. You wouldn't play this blue version of the deck without Wrath of Retribution, and that's also inoptimal. If you had 2 other chain links to do before the actual Wrath of Retribution, you can do that. Of course, you might want them to be a little smaller of attacks because you want them to also get the pump from the Spreading Flames, where if you swung at the daggers, then did all that, then the attacks you'd play from your hand would also get pumped. It depends on the situation. If it's late game, I'd opt for playing the attacks after. If it's early game, I'd opt for playing the attacks before. Really just depends. Also, whenever you can proc your mask triggers would be a good time to also play those attacks. But that's all the reds in the deck, and the yellows. The rest of the deck is going to be blues. One of the blues we had in the last list, or not in the last list, but in the list that I played before that I didn't make a video on, was Throw Dagger. Throw Dagger is a very powerful card. It's a 0-cost 3-block A react that lets you throw a dagger, but if the dagger does damage, you draw a card, which means it's another replacement effect like the Ancestral Empowerment that can find you more cards to play in your turn. But the reason why it's notable is because it can break your other dagger, so you can bring both back off Cindra and pretty much just have this be a free replacement. It's also a blue block 3, so we're not losing anything for playing it in our deck, and it's some extra reach at the end of the game if we actually need it. Really good card, one of the best cards in Cindra. The rest are blues that you don't really see too often. Dragon Power, we already talked about a little bit. It's a 1-for-2 at blue, but if it's Draconic, it gets +3, which means it's a blue 1-for-5, which is really, really powerful. Very good late game as like an extra attack with if we have extra fealty tokens, or if we have a brand of Cinderclaw, it's always playable. It is a card we will pitch or block with most of the time, as Ninja Blues go, but still a very powerful card. I don't think I'd play Blue Cindra without this card. I think the first 2 blues you put in your Blue Cindra list are Throw Dagger and Dragon Power. The rest of the blues are some pretty nice options. The only other 3 we're playing is Prowess of Agility. This is a 0-cost Ninja Aura block 3. It's at blue. When you attack for the 4th time during a turn, you destroy it and draw a card. But at the beginning of your end phase, if you attacked less than 3 times, you destroy it. So to actually put it into play, you need to attack 3 times, which is pretty easy to do on this deck, to be honest, since daggers themselves are 1 each. So you go card, dagger, dagger, play this. You get to save an arsenal. You get to keep 1, say it's turn 1. You go like Hot on Their Heels, pitch another blue to dagger, dagger, flick one of the daggers by that one you flicked back, and then play Prowess of Agility. Then you can arsenal your last card. You have the Prowess set up. So next turn you have a 6-card hand, which is really good. As well as that, it's a blue block 3. That's sort of what they're in the deck for. But that setup ability versus some matchups is so key, as you need high card hands to just punch through your opponent's health. The last 2 blues in the deck are going to be one-ofs. Concealed Blade is here just because there are some matchups that are going to try to disrupt your daggers. New is still in the format, as well as a deck like Vincent plays cards that can banish your daggers, and there are going to be some other cards that do that as well. It's also a way that you can replace a dagger if you can't actually activate Cindra. Sometimes there are games where you don't get to activate Cindra a lot, so Concealed Blade can help you get that extra dagger into circulation. It's just a good card to play. It's a +1 pump. It works on all the same things the Ancestral Empowerment works on, so I personally really like it in the deck, as well as it's a blue 0 cost block 3. And then the last one is 1 copy of Exposed. Exposed is a card that you can't play if you're marked, but it gives an attack +1 power, and you mark the defending hero. Really powerful stuff. It actually gets to generate you a fealty token, and it's an automatic mark. So in all, this card just gives you really good value. I wouldn't play more than one of it because it doesn't block, but it does actually work on any attack, which means it's great for your mass triggers. I would cut it versus Assassins because it doesn't block, which means it doesn't help you stop any disruptive effects, and those are another hero that can easily mark you. I'd also cut it against Fang or other Cindras because they're going to be marking you as well, and sometimes you're just left on a mark, and then this card doesn't do anything. You have to pitch it, and drawing this card off a pitch deck feels kind of bad. Of course, we will pitch it sometimes, but in those marking matchups, drawing this later feels pretty bad. Other than that, though, that is the full main deck. Let's take a look at our deck's inventory. Looking at the inventory, starting with the equipment, we have our 3rd Kunai of Retribution that we will be bringing in whenever we for our Concealed Blade, and we also have 1 Tide Flippers just so we can deal with some arcane damage. There isn't too much arcane damage in the format right now, but you always got to have some arcane prevention. Tide Flippers are the best option for Ninja. For the rest of the inventory, we do got a lot of 2-ofs, so let's go over them really quickly, and a lot of 1-ofs. Art of Dragon Scale is going to come in versus matchups that have that 1 key piece of equipment. Think your Assassin matchups, sometimes your Guardian matchups, sometimes your Wizard matchups. Art of Dragon Scale is the only real way that we can disrupt equipment that actually feels like it's disrupting equipment. Command and Conquer. Very powerful card. We're playing 2 of it. You can play any other CNC replacement you want. Say that in most of the videos that I actually play CNC in the deck. I think right now CNC is the best as there are a lot of defense reactions going around. Would I play Wreck Havoc? No, I would not. I would play the Weakest Link or Erase Face or one of the other ones instead. But this card is very powerful versus those slow matchups. We're on 2 Loyalty Beyond the Grave. I've seen people play 3, but I really think you only need 2, especially because we are on Sound the Alarm. Versus our Assassin matchups, I opt for the Loyalty Beyond the Grave, as those are generally matchups we want that bigger pop-up turn. Well, all the Assassins except Slippy, I wouldn't bring this in against Slippy because those are pretty fast games. Well, I wouldn't bring the Sound the Alarm in against Slippy. I would consider the Loyalty because you want the D-React. But the way you play against Assassin, at least for me, is I sit on one of my 4 blocking D-Reacts in Arsenal the whole game. So when they throw Leave No Witness or Codex me, I can easily just block it and not lose anything. Loyalty Beyond the Grave doesn't block 4, which means they'll get actual damage through. But at least there's a D-React sitting in my arsenal, and later I can use them to draw a card. So not the best into Assassin. This is better versus like Guardian or any of those slow matchups where you can actually stack it up. The other D-Reacts, I have 1 Shelter and 2 Sink Below. This should be 3 Shelter. I only own 1 Shelter. So I'm playing 2 Sink Below. Although that isn't without its downsides, though. Sink Below does, or that isn't without its upsides. Because Sink Below does actually let you do something. It lets you cycle through your Exposed or your Oath of Loyalties if you don't need them. If you have a hand of 2 Oath of Loyalty, you're definitely sinking 1 to the bottom. If you have Exposed, but you're going for an Oath of Loyalty turn, maybe you bottom the Exposed or one of your other cards. It can help cycle. I think I would rather still have 3 Shelter, but you don't need it. If you don't have any Shelter, you can just play 3 copies of Sink Below. And then the last one is 2 Wax On. With a lot of the aggro decks going away, I don't think you need as many Wax Ons in your list. I would still play it because it's still very good versus pretty much all of the Assassins except like Azuri, but you don't see much Azuri. If you wanted to, if you didn't have the Shelter, you could go up to a 3rd Wax On, but Sink Below and Shelter from the Storm are better in more matchups than Wax On, so I only opt for the 2 Wax On. The last 2 cards in the inventory are Sound the Alarm. This will generally come in when we bring in the Loyalty Beyond the Graves, because it's a way that we can tutor one out, so we only need to realistically find one, or into Assassin, as we can just get the D-React we need to stop whatever they're doing. I don't bring this in against really any other matchup. Assassin is just really the only one. I could see you bringing it into something like Jarl if you think they're on Pummel, but I don't think many of them are going to be bringing Pummel into you. So Sound the Alarm is just really a card for that Assassin matchup. And then same as the last card, Snag. This will generally be the card that comes in over the Exposed in the Assassin matchups. It's really only for the Assassin matchups. It's just there to stop that one big attack that's coming at you. It does kind of suck a little more now because they do have a lot more shred effects. But if you catch them without that shred effect, Snag plus a block from your boot can easily be a way to fully defend an attack. Or if you think they have the shred, easily just play a Snag and have a D-React, or play a Snag and block with one of your other 3 blocks to fully block up that attack. But other than that, that is going to be the end of the video. This has been a list that I have been enjoying so much to play. This Cindra blue list is one that, again, I didn't really expect to see much play after Cindra's original showing on her release, but now with the shifting format, you can play a little more value-based, and the blues just help you have that little extra value, letting you swing with your daggers every turn. But again, with all that, that is going to be the end of the video. I hope you all enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the next one. Goodbye.